Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the class of 2001 Combined Fire Academy graduation. My name is Lieutenant Calvin Brown, and I'm the training lieutenant and the volunteer coordinator for the Larkspur Fire Protection District. Along with the instructional staff and the recruits of the Academy, I'd like to thank everyone for attending this morning's graduation. We are honored this morning to have the command staffs from the three departments that are represented here today. Chief Jared Lamb, Chief Stuart Mills, Chief Christopher McCarthy, Chief Charles Walden, and our keynote speaker, Chief Bobby Halton. At this time, we'll be posting the colors. Please stand and remain standing for a moment of silence.
Uniform personnel, attention, whoo! Honorary, attention, whoo! Class 2001, attention, whoo! Honorary, prepare to carry colors. Carry colors. Uniform personnel, present earth. Honorary, class 2001, forward, march. Class 2001, present earth. Colors, prepare to post the colors. Ready? Post. Recut. Honorary, present earth. All uniformed personnel, order, earth.
Ladies and gentlemen, please can we have a moment of silence for the police, fire, and military who've died in protection of our country. Thank you.
Honorary, left, face. Forward, march. Chiefs, please take your seat.
2001, we have accountability. Charlie, anything for the good of the order?
No, sir.
Please have a seat. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, class. At this point, I'd like to thank the staff here at Bear Dance Country Club for hosting today's event and providing the food and drinks. Additionally, I'd like to acknowledge the instructional cadre for their assistance, of which this academy would not be possible. They include Firefighter Duran, Dietermeyer, Smedra, Adi, Kelka, Ott, Lorenz, Clemens, Shoemaker, Fire Marshal Randall Johnson, Doctors Louderback and Gilliam, Lieutenants Jackson, Johnson, and Berry, Captains Devan, Hill, Gorton, and Camanola, Chief Mike Scott, Chief Christopher McCarthy, Detective Tallman, Paramedic Mason, and Dispatcher Kara Martin. Throughout the course of this academy, this particular class has gone through hours and sometimes days, I'm sure they feel like it, of classroom and drill ground experience. So ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor this morning to introduce our keynote speaker. I first met Chief Halton in 2009 at the Fire Department Instructors Conference, also known as FDIC in Indianapolis, outside the Clawda Irish Pub, which is the unofficial headquarters for FDIC. If you would have told me 11 years later that I would be in this position introducing Chief Halton, I would have told the bartender to cut you off. So Chief Halter comes from a long line of firefighters. He began his career in the early 70s as a volunteer. He has worked for the U.S. Forest Service and as a ranger and firefighter, the Albuquerque Fire Department, where he rose to the rank of deputy chief, the Coppell Fire Department in Coppell, Texas, where he served as the chief of the department, and the U.S. Department of State under the Diplomatic Security Division. Chief Halton is currently the editorial director for Clarion U.S., where he is responsible for all the editorial content in fire engineering, fire apparatus emergency equipment, the Journal of Emergency Medical Services, Firefighter Nation, Fire Rescue magazines, as well as the fire engineering books and video division. Additionally, he's responsible for all the educational content at FDIC and EMS Today. Chief Halton is currently active with the Limestone Fire Protection District No. 2, where he serves as the training chief. And he's still trying to determine if he's actually a car mechanic who likes to fight fires or a firefighter who likes working on cars. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my distinct honor and pleasure to introduce today's keynote speaker, Chief Bobby Halton.
The American author Elizabeth Elliot once wrote that there is nothing worth living for unless it's worth dying for. That's a powerful thought, and it forces us to query our very purpose, why we've chosen what we've chosen to do in life. It makes us question what we live for. Where do we find meaning? It's the question we ask here this morning, and not one lacking in significance for the group that we've assembled here today. For Mrs. Elliot's words are by no means casual words, and by no means should anyone take lightly committing themselves to a cause, a mission, or a group that could cost you your life. It was perhaps said by Captain Ernest Evans, who was the commander of the USS Johnson. Captain Evans earned the Congressional Medal of Honor for his incredible bravery during the Battle off Samar. Captain Evans addressed his crew with the following words during his commander's fight talk prior to the Johnson's final deployment. He said, "This is going to be a fighting ship, and I intend to go in harm's way. Anyone who doesn't want to go along better get off now." The Johnson would be sunk with all hands on board. Evans would lose his life. Likewise, these 12 brave men and women are joining the fire fighting service. We go in harm's way. As such, it is fitting and proper this morning that we gather together, not just as a profession, but as a community, a family of brothers and sisters who have freely chosen to stay on board and fight against nature, fight against the randomness of misfortune, fight against disease, and, of course, fire. But most importantly, not just fight against, but fight for human dignity and honor, the preservation and the handiwork of our fellow men, the principles and the fundamentals that make America the greatest example in history of free persons exercising their God-given natural rights. Today, we honor these 12 men and women who have chosen to stay on board, understanding well both the risks and rewards alike. These 12 have committed themselves to the fight. Today, we honor Jada Hinton, Jared Picker, Chris Henninger, Matt Muser, Tyler Quintana, Amanda Stanley, Sloan Wiggins, Carol Costanza, Mitchell Akala, Fernando Hernandez, Clayton Knox, Cody Schauer. Welcome aboard. These heroic persons correctly have chosen to stay on board. So we must reflect, albeit briefly, The irrefutable fact that our work, our lives, our purpose are inextricably intertwined in many indirect and direct ways. Understanding what motivates us to serve is critical for our success. Respect for people, their humanity, their dignity, their safety, and their health, that of our community, the protection of our community's properties, and above all, in all things, the highest ethical behavior. Not trivial issues, but this morning, it's a critical conversation about what we live for, what our purpose is as firefighters. It's a debt that we must honor to these 12 who are openly declaring their willingness to stay on board and fight, and if needs be, give their last full measure in the protection of their fellow citizens. So let's begin by reviewing our elementary education. As school children, we all read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Frankl was an Auschwitz survivor, a psychiatrist. We read it again in secondary school and again in high school. The message is simple. Good people, healthy people, require purpose. According to Frankl, the most worthy purpose in life is helping others. Our work, firefighting, our profession, often supplies much of that need. It's been said that the word we have chosen is a lowly one. That being the case, we agree with Chief O'Hagan that it's sufficient to motivate persons like us to heights of valor, even to the supreme sacrifice. So who do we admire? Who do we respect? You know, people are funny in that regard. Often people very different from us and very far away intrigue us the most. That being so, we often ascribe qualities to them, characteristics to them, that may or not really exist. It's like when we're sure our dog knows what we're thinking. We casually ascribe conscious human thought, the most fundamental aspect of our humanity, to an animal. We often lavish praise also on people who simply parrot others' works, reenact others' lives on television, movie, and stage. We heap adulation on those who are skillful at games, sports, activities with no real benefit to humanity except perhaps for distraction and perhaps the physical endowment of those who participate. And this is not to demean or impugn any of those people or their work. Many are wonderful people, excellent at what they do. And although famous, few are heroic, and fewer still are inspiring. Yet, society elevates them over the troops out there protecting us, over the crews on duty who we serve with, over the real heroes around us every day. We do same with the cryptic folks, the gurus, the shamans, the so-called modern woke philosophers, and our generally underwhelming political class of the postmodern era. These elites with power and money, political and academic titles, have little in common with firefighters and little use for us, except for maybe cannon fodder or backdrops, the useful idiots as Stalin so appropriately called his fellow socialists. We should heed Voltaire's admonition that we should cherish those who seek the truth, but beware of those who find it. So in this cacophony of gibberish and distraction, it's not unusual, and it's going to happen to you 12, for people to come up to us and say, I don't know how you could do that. That being our jobs. Now, most of the time we shrug it off, and we say something like, I'd just like to help people. Or something funny, like firefighting is the most fun you can have with your clothes on. We're generally self-effacing, self-deprecating, and we're not comfortable as being the center of attention or perceived as being something special. Now that's generally speaking. We do have our share out there of self-proclaimed heroes. They're mostly online, keyboard superheroes with names like Superdog and Fire Dude. There's something else silly to hide their real identity. But most of us regular firefighters like you all, we're not interested in the virtue signaling or phony recognition. We're interested in things like training and growth and operational readiness, so we can be better prepared and better equipped to address what's ever called on us in the real world, in our communities. Firefighters like this assembly here of these 12 are unquestionably more interested in things that you cannot measure. Things like knowledge, wisdom, duty, virtues like respect, integrity, courage, and honor. William Bruce Cameron once said that not everything that you can count matters, and not everything that matters can be counted. So it's not an insignificant undertaking this morning then to probe seriously as to why men and women, such as these 12, who most assuredly could be successful at any other endeavor and most assuredly suffer far less physical pain and stress and make much more monetary compensation, nonetheless chose to become firefighters. It has been said that firefighting is the war that never ends. And as you look at our faces, you see that we're men and women. We're Chinese, we're Japanese, we're black, we're white, we're Cherokee. Among our troops are every race, every creed, every nationality, every sexual orientation, every class. And as such, some have suffered discrimination in the outside world. But not here, not on our watch. We may call God by different names, but here we pledge allegiance to one flag. Here we are one. We are one with humanity. For in the world, that war that never ends, we go daily under the shadow of death, where we are all equal, where we are all vulnerable, where all we have is one another. You have her six, he has her six, you have his six. We protect one another. So what motivates firefighters? Who do we really admire? Why do we find them worthy of our esteem and respect? And irrespective of what some might think, it is a question worthy of our time. And it is something that we need to do this morning so that you are ready for your future. For without men and women like you, devoted to the service of others, the very personification of man's humanity to man, we would face a bleak and unappealing future. But we do not face disaster and doom. We do not face ruination and riot. Quite the opposite, in fact, is the case, despite what the alarmists in the media want to expound. The quality of life the world over, and especially in the United States, continues to improve because of persons like you. Despite what the socialists say, it is the individual who matters and not the collective. Humanity represents every life. Every person has equal value. Donne was right in Meditation 17. The death of one diminishes all. The bell does toll for thee. So despite what the postmodernists say, it is the influence of family, community, and faith. That's still the number one motivator in deeds of honor, despite what the globalists say. It's national patriotism, love of one's homeland, people, and places, not globalism, that drives the innovation and creativity of individuals the world over. And for us, the burden that you have accepted this morning is the physical protection of humanity itself. That is a higher calling. And proof of this responsibility is at the forefront of every survey on trust and honor that's ever been done. At the top of that survey is the cop, the firefighter, and the warfighter. To live up to this honor, you have to strive endlessly to deserve that recognition. You have to live in ways that confirms that archetypal image. We've been preserved these many years in peace of war, prosperity, and struggle because of persons of character like you. President John F. Kennedy once said, "A nation reveals itself not only by the men it produces, but by the men it honors, by the men it remembers." In July of 1863, during the Battle of Gettysburg, the 104th Volunteer Infantry was being commanded by a 21-year-old West Point graduate, a Catholic, an immigrant. Now, under his command on the extreme right of the federal line were his troops. They were all volunteers, firefighters, shopkeepers, teachers. As O'Rourke and his men climbed to the top of Little Round Top, a surging Confederate advance that met them, and with no time to reload their rifles, O'Rourke wielded his saber and they charged the Confederate line. The heroic charge of O'Rourke and his men turned the tide of the Confederates, but it cost O'Rourke his life. A stylized Maltese cross, like the patch on your shoulders now, represents the colonel's final resting point. And that design is not insignificant. On that monument are the words patriotism, duty, valor, and fraternity. On the extreme left of the federal line was the 20th Maine. Now, leading them was a man that the troops didn't have very much confidence in them at all. Colonel Joshua Chamberlain. He was a professor of modern language. He was studied in ministry. He was a bookish man. He was often found in prayer. But as the Confederates came in a final attack on him and his men, he bellowed bayonets. His men charged. The assault was so ferocious, the Confederates backed off and retreated, so the Federal troops that day were able to turn the tide of one of the most significant battles in the history of our nation. So there were 2 bayonet charges that day. O'Rourke and Chamberlain. For his heroics that day, Chamberlain was given the honor of accepting the Confederates' formal surrender of arms at that ceremony marking the end of the deadliest conflict in our history. As he accepted Lee's surrender, Chamberlain ordered his men to attention in a final salute of honor and respect to the vanquished Confederate army. O'Rourke and Chamberlain were scholars, they were pious, but most importantly, they were leading volunteers, shopkeepers, firefighters, tradesmen. They made decisions that changed the course of history, and they made them without hesitation. They made them without weighing possible consequences of success or failure. They could do so because they knew what they were living for. It gave them a sense of indomitable purpose. It is said that doing the right thing does not require thinking. Now, 7 decades and 8 years later, in December of 1941, the U.S. Navy was off the coast of Tarawa. Missed a few there, I apologize. Tarawa was an island about 2,000 miles southwest of, or 1,500 miles southwest of Hawaii, and it was the most heavily fortified atoll in the entire World War II. Now, Japanese Admiral Shigeshi Hibaki once said that the U.S. couldn't take Tarawa with 1 million men in 100 years. The islands crisscrossed with defenses, the beaches were naturally ringed with shallow reefs. Now, the Marines were being led that day by a fellow named Henry Jim Crow. He was in command, shotgun-carrying, cigar-smoking Marine. Second in command was a fellow named William Chamberlain, a college professor, a bookish man, who the men didn't have very much confidence in. Chamberlain joined Navy ROTC in Dartmouth in 1936. In 1938, he received a doctorate in economics from Columbia. He went on to be a professor at Northwestern University, and he was called to active duty in 1940. Now, the attack plane for Tarawa that day, like most attack plans, fell apart quickly. Bad weather prevented our landing crafts from getting anywhere near the beaches. The Japanese coastal guns just ripped down the Marines and snagged vessels. The Marines who did make it to shore, they were exhausted or they were wounded. The lagoon quickly became completely congested with disabled landing crafts and the fallen bodies of our bloodied Marines. By the end of the first day of that conflict, 1,500 United States Marines had given their lives. On the second day of fighting, once again, our assault troops had to leave their crafts far short of the shore and wade in under horrific enemy fire. Although wounded during those operations, Chamberlain, the quiet, devout, bookish man, who the men didn't have very much confidence in and were very doubtful of, promptly reorganized 3 companies of Marines in the deadliest position on the island. Yard by yard, he directed these Marines in a courageous assault, routinely exposing himself to the most intense enemy fire. The quiet, bookish man, who they all doubted, became one of the most lethal fighting machines in Marine Corps history. His spirit motivated the very men who planned to abandon him to nominate him for the Congressional Medal of Honor. Of the 4,785 Japanese soldiers on Tarawa, only 17 were taken alive. In the 76-hour battle at Tarawa, as many U.S. Marines were killed in action as the U.S. troops suffered in the 6-month battle for Guadalcanal. The Chamberlains, they were family men, they were patriots, they were pious, they were devoted, they were leading volunteers, soldiers, ordinary men in extraordinary valor. These men knew what they were living for, and they proved it was worth dying for. These are the men we remember. These are the men we honor. The American Legion has summed up in 4 words what it is that motivates these selfless acts of valor. For God and country. To the Legion's, service to God is service to country, and service to country is service to God. For God and country is a phrase that we grew up with here in America, but not just here, around the world, in various nuanced themes. God save the Queen, God, fatherland, and liberty, God, home and freedom. It explains why countless patriots have served in our armed services, our military, law enforcement, and firefighting sectors. We agree with Elizabeth Elliot that there is nothing worth living for unless it's worth dying for. We would also say that anything worth loving is worth fighting for. And what you truly love is exactly what you live for. And among those things firefighters love are our fellow citizens. Our mission is to protect their lives and respect their dignity. Among those things we love are our beautiful country. Our mission is to protect its environment, its land, and its treasure. Among those things we love are our God-given natural rights, our freedoms, and our liberties. Our mission is to ensure that all Americans can pursue their happiness knowing that we are looking out for their safety. Among those things we love are the gifts of divine providence bequeathed to this nation, of posterity and generosity, the gifts of deliverance and forgiveness, the gifts of liberty and responsibility. Today, some demand we not speak of God. They demand we not speak of America. They say it's hateful. They say it's offensive. They insist on controlling our language, our thoughts, and thereby our lives. To their dismay, firefighters, we're not intimidated. We'll never comply. We know to do so would be wrong. We know that it was John Adams who said our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. Firefighters have no problem expecting our desire to live as obedient persons. We're all wearing our masks, but obedient to God, subservient to the wisdom of our ancestors, and never kneeling to the authority or changing whims of political truths arrived yesterday on Twitter or some fool's podcast. That's not wisdom, that's folly. And it should be noted that God and God and country represents all the various constructs of the archetype of the ultimate good. God is a reference to the archetypal good in all humanity. John Locke and Thomas Jefferson's God of nature and nature's God. The spiritual connection between all of us, a higher power, a mystic belief, not a specific theology. Country represents our home, the actual land on which millions of our forefathers, our parents, friends, sons, daughters, are buried. Our states, our families, our neighborhoods, our cities, our towns, the very collection of peoples and places that make up our country as a living entity. As firefighters, we understand what it means to have faith, spiritualism. We understand what it means to have patriotism. We're especially proud of our countries. We believe our country is the best, and our firefighters are the best. We also tend to hold fast to our faith. It buoys us in dark times. It guides us in uncertain times. And it reminds us to be humble, kind, and forgiving. Maybe it's because we deal with the uncertainty of life. We recognize how fragile it is, how quickly it can all be swept away. We know life isn't fair, and sometimes really bad things happen to really good people, and there's nothing we can do to change that outcome. Some people would call us simple, because we love our nation and what it stands for. Some people would call us stupid for believing in an all-powerful God or mystic energy for good, without being able to prove it. It was 2 days before Christmas in 1991, Ladder 43, and arrived at 103rd Street. People were exiting the front of the building, smoke is blowing out the doors. A young firefighter from 43 is assigned to take the roof position. On the rooftop, he was met by a bunch of screaming civilians, all pointing to a man who was about to jump out of a window. He looks over the rear wall, and he can see fire blowing out of the lower 3 windows and smoke pushing out of the windows above. A 20-year-old civilian named Pablo Martinez is lying across the top section of a window on the 5th floor, and heavy smoke is billowing out of that window. The firefighter grabs his radio. He recognizes they're going to need to do a rope rescue. He pops open the 2 bulkhead doors to alleviate the pressure so that the civilians could get out. The conditions are really deteriorating rapidly, so he's getting his rope ready, and he's joined by firefighter John McCain. They size up the situation. Now the problem is, the only substantial object that they could tie off to was going to lower the firefighter directly in front of the venting windows. So they took a pipe bowl, they put in a quick pick, and they lowered the rope based on that over the window that Martinez is trapped above, with full knowledge that any slip of that pole, any sudden jar of that pole, would drop that firefighter and Martinez 5 stories to their death below. But despite these overwhelming odds and incredible risks, the young firefighter ties himself off and begins his descent in extremely high heat and thick, blinding smoke. Now, as he nears, Pablo, in his panic, jumps into the firefighter's arms. So now our hero is hanging 5 stories above the ground, holding Pablo like a baby and dangling above the fire. The firefighters start lowering Pablo and the 160-pound man he's carrying down as quickly as they could. Now, as they lower him to the ground, all the fire officers observed this, and they all entered it into their official FDNY logbooks that only their prayers kept those windows from blowing out. Both of them, Pablo and the firefighter, were transported for their burns and other injuries that they sustained. But for his incredible courage that day, Mike Dugan got the Gordon Bennett Award. That's the highest award for valor in the FDNY. 3 years later, they gave Mike the Archer Medal. Now, the Archer Medal is only given to that firefighter whose courage, whose dedication, whose bravery stood out in the last 3 years among 17,000 other firefighters as the bravest of the brave in the FDNY. Now, Dugan is a devoutly religious man, a family man. He's a very bookish man. He's an intensely loyal friend and an incredibly devoted patriot. On the night of September 10th, 2001, Mike took off to celebrate a rededication of 73 and 42 in the Bronx. In attendance with him that night were Father Michael Judge, Chief Pete Gansey, Jack Feehan, and many others who'd be murdered the next morning. Mike was a covering officer the next day on September 11th, so he responded from the academy. After the towers collapsed, Mike collected a couple of men, and they began looking for survivors. And as they walked in the smoke and the dust and the confusion, Chris Engeldrum saw an American flag on the ground, so Mike and Chris picked it up, with Chris Engeldrum bucking that ladder. That's Chris, bucking that ladder. Mike and Chris hung that flag. We stand together in respect for everyone's beliefs and opinions, and unity for everyone's health, safety, dignity, and freedom. We stand for solidarity and conservation, and always with the goal of the betterment of humanity. We stand together opposing tyranny, not with more hatred, not with anger, but with examples of kindness, and examples of forgiveness, and examples of service, and innovation, and selflessness. It was Alexis de Tocqueville who said, "Liberty cannot be established without morality, and morality without faith." Franklin taught us that freedom requires virtue, faith requires freedom, and freedom requires faith. Firefighters in the war that never ends strive unceasingly to protect anyone who finds themselves in danger, regardless of race, gender, politics, religion, any other consideration. Humanity is first and foremost, simply humanity. The protection of humanity and the preservation of its endeavors, those are our fundamental principles. Now, Indy, ladder 20, arrives first, heavy smokes reported, no access to the apparatus in the front of the building, difficult hydrant placement, makes things challenging. Crews are faced with extensive layouts to try to get their lines up to the second and third floors. Ladder had begun the process of throwing ground ladders, and they have a valid report of someone trapped on the third floor. A crew member attempts to enter search off the ladder, but is pushed back by the intense heat. The crews are working to extinguish the fire. Squad 10 arrives. Squad 10 makes their way to the second floor. Waiting on the second floor, Squad 10 officer and fighter Adam Godane are at the ready, anxious to make the third floor where a woman is reportedly trapped. The heat's intense. The face shields of those on the line are already starting to compromise and degrade. A quick blast of water allows Adam to bolt past the nozzle and make it up to the third floor that's now really heavily charged with fire. It makes Adam retreat back down. But quickly as he gets back down, he somehow regains his composure. He finds the strength and the courage to go back up to that third floor. Back on the third floor, he enters the apartment. Now everything in that front room's on fire, and the heat's intense. He's crawling low as fast as he can. He could feel his skin burning underneath his turnout coat, so that's kind of grounding him in the reality of how dire his current situation was. But his conviction of the righteousness of his mission, his purpose, keeps pushing him even further. He said, "I knew I was burning, but I thought if I could just crawl as fast as I could and do a quick search, I had a chance of finding her." Now, due to the free burning fire in that front room, he had great visibility. So he quickly gets to the back rooms, but the woman's still not to be found. Heading towards the rear, Adam finds a bedroom full of thick blinding smoke, zero visibility. Simultaneously to Adam's efforts, there's other aggressive efforts going on throughout the building. By the time Adam hits that back bedroom, his face mask now is completely compromised. Suddenly he feels some water come over him. An engine crew had a line at the window. Another firefighter had gotten to that window, but the heat was so intense, it burnt his face, so he backed back out. Adam yells at him, "Keep throwing the water!" And it's hot, he's burning alive, and he needed to buy a little more time. The firefighter at the window goes, "We got you!" That firefighter's yelling back gave Adam a little more opportunity to regain his focus and his composure. It gave him a compass for his way out if he needed it, if he had to bail. He also said he knew he was reassured because now he knew somebody had his six. Adam makes his way around the hall. He finds a door. He's still on his hands and knees. The door is locked, and now he's breaching the door. He gets it open, he searches, and he finds the woman unconscious in a bathtub. Now he's unable to radio for help, so he pulls the woman out of the bathtub. He gets near that front bedroom. He screams for assistance. The other two firefighters come off the ladder into the room, and they help get her up onto the ladder, and they take her down. She survived. She made a full recovery. Now, despite all the reasons to slow down and wait for assistance and retreat or wait for water, Adam never gave up the fight. He felt compelled to keep searching. Adam was able to do all he did, not just because of the incredible training that he received, as you did from these incredible men and women who've taught you, not only because of his fellow firefighters, but because, like you, Adam has purpose. Like you, Adam would never give up. Like you, Adam kept going. He lost his sight. His face piece was so badly glazed, it didn't fail, and Adam didn't fail. Adam did what he did for the same reason we all do. For God and country. Irrespective of what some might find offensive in those four words, they work for us. President Kennedy was right. A nation does reveal itself, not only by the men it produces, but by the men it honors, by the men it remembers. Later in life, Major Chamberlain of Tarawa fame, he was sitting with his grown son in a movie theater. They're watching Sands of Iwo Jima with John Wayne, John Alja, and Forrest Tucker. As the film went on, the Major squeezed his son's hand, and he said, "Why are we making heroes out of these people when so many real heroes are all around us now? We're part of the rhythm of history. We belong, firefighters, to warfighters and cops. We have each other's six. It's hurtful to us when we're told we're bad because we're bound to our ancient and honorable ancestral ways. We don't feel bad at all. In fact, we feel quite the opposite. Generally, those elites who hold those opinions, they never rode backwards or have much dirt under their fingernails or bothered to try to engage us in thoughtful conversation. So who do firefighters look for meaning? We find it in the same things that Colonel O'Rourke did. Duty, patriotism, valor, fraternity. Who do we respect? Who do we remember? We honor the same people Chamberlain did. Not actors, not politicians, not pseudo-intellectuals, not presumptuous elites. We respect these 12 men and women sitting in front of us today. Men and women who seek no recognition, who seek no power or fame. Real heroes whose very presence consecrates this room we're in right now. Men and women who fully understand that the fire service is about fighting fire, fighting death, and fighting for others, and intentionally putting themselves in harm's way, like those who've come before us. Men and women who, like these 12, are who we honor and who we will remember. And when someone decides to come up and ask us, why did these 12 stay on board? Why do they continue to serve? These 12 will say, because some things are worth dying for. We do this for you. We do this for each other. We do this for God and country. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Chief, I'd like to thank you again. It's been a phenomenal weekend. Thank you for your words. Thank you for your wisdom and joining us today. And we do have a couple small tokens of our appreciation. First of all, I want to make you an honorary chief officer of the Larkspur Fire Department. So the duty schedule comes out next week. We start on Wednesday. And secondly, we have another plaque for you. It says, presented to Chief Bobby Halton in appreciation for your participation in the class of 2001 Academy graduation, November 14th, 2020. And at this time, our platoon leader would like me to say a few words.
Can I get the squad leaders up here with the 2 gifts that we had put together? So first, we got together as a class and wanted to do something special for your first academy that you were training lieutenant for. So we put together, pulled together all our money and put together this this plaque with your name on it as a memento of your first academy, and you were kind of thrown into the mix right in the middle of our academy. So just kind of a remembrance, we wanted to go ahead and give you something that will always remember you for your first academy. Thank you very much. And then secondly, the amount of time he's done chores at our station. Every single one of us have walked past all the chief offices and all the shadow boxes that were put together for the past and our fellow firefighters and academies that have gone on at Larkspur. So we decided to put together our own shadow box, and we'd like to dedicate it to the department, to put it up for you, Chief Mills and Chief Walden. Has our recruit class, the 3 different patches. I know for us Larkspur guys, we've been in it for about 15 months, and there's been a lot of things that made it a very, very bumpy road. We were then joined by Palmer Lake and Jackson, which we were very, very pleased, and thank you. And on behalf of our class and the brotherhood that we've built, and joined by our fellow firefighters and ladies, men, and women of the fire service, we wanted to make this shadow box for the department. It has, if you turn a little bit, it has our class flag, 2 class pictures with everybody in it, and then we have each one of the department patches along with plaques with each department name and the firefighters from each department. And we'd like to present this to you, Chief Walden and Chief Mills, for the department.
Is that a lock of hair?
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Andy. This is great.
Good job, man.
We'll get it to the station and get it for you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Appreciate it. Again, thank you, Chief Halton. We appreciate it. Absolutely. Since the beginning of the academy, these 12 individuals have been known as recruits. It's not until the completion of the academy, the passing of all written and practical exams, their badge pinning, and their oath of office that they hold the actual rank and title of firefighter. At this time, I'd like to invite the 3 chiefs up to begin the badge pinning, and following that, we'll have the administration of the oath of office. So we'll start with Chief Lane.
Chief Walter, would you like to step forward?
Good. Up first, from the Jackson 105 Fire Department, Jada Hinton.
thought about doing like the SEALs do, put the pin on it.
Yeah.
Oh.
Congratulations.
Next, Jared Picker.
Yeah, that's just picture.
Thanks, Chief Lynn. Next will be Chief Stuart Mills from the Watchford Fire Protection District. First up will be Chris Henniger.
Congratulations, sir. Thank you.
Matt Musser.
Congratulations, sir. Welcome aboard.
Tyler Quintana.
Congratulations. Welcome aboard.
Congratulations. Amanda Stanley.
Firefighter Stanley, congratulations. Welcome aboard. Collapse the hand with 10 gauge.
Yeah,
10 minutes.
that would be rough.
Sloan Wiggins.
Wiggins, congratulations.
Thanks, sir.
Welcome aboard, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Finally, Chief Christopher McCarthy of Palmer Lake Fire and Rescue. First up, Carlin Costanzo.
Congratulations, welcome aboard.
Mitchell Hackla. Fernando Triceps Hernandez.
First engineer. Great guy.
Clayton Knox. Cody Shower. Thank you, Chief Wall. Thank you, Chief Moore. Congratulations. And one more formality. At this time, I'd like to invite Division Chief Charles Walden to administer the oath of office.
Before I have you stand, I have a short preamble to the swearing. Firefighters are civil servants and sworn officers, following standard policies and procedures of the fire service and standard operating procedures of their departments. They are there to prevent human suffering and death, to stabilize the incident and prevent damages and loss of property. It is a great honor to have the opportunity to swear in these recruits of the 20-01 Academy. And now, class, let me ask you to stand and raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, Tyler Quintana,
Do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support
do solemnly swear or affirm to support
and defend the Constitution
and defend the Constitution
of the United States of America
of the United States of America
and the state of Colorado
and the state of Colorado
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
both foreign and domestic.
both foreign and domestic.
I understand and will follow
I understand and will follow
the policies and procedures
policies and procedures
of my individual department,
of my individual department.
and I will faithfully and impartially discharge
I will faithfully and impartially discharge
my duties as a firefighter
my duties as a firefighter
according to the best
according to the best
of my skills and abilities,
of my skills and abilities.
so help me God.
So help me God.
You may put down your arms. Congratulations.
Thank you, Chief. Class, you may be seated. At this time, I'd like to invite Chief Stewart Mills, the Washington Fire Protection District, for a few closing remarks.
So good morning, everyone. It's great to see you here. And I would like to extend a special thanks to our keynote speaker, Chief Halton. I believe that we're all really honored to have him here. As graduates of this academy, I'm here to say that I recognize and truly appreciate all the hard work that each of you have put into successfully completing the Larkspur Fire Protection District Volunteer Firefighter Academy. And normally, when we have these graduation ceremonies, we have a lot of family and friends here of the graduates. Unfortunately, I believe everyone understands why that can't happen this time. But I hope that your family and friends are watching on live streaming, and if they are, I'm sure they're very proud of you. So when I say you, I'm just not referring specifically to those of you who are graduating today, but also, as I said earlier, I congratulate your family and friends, and I'm grateful for their understanding of the time that you've spent away from them. It really does take a considerable amount of time and effort to get through this academy. Normally, the time and effort often mean missing a family function, not being able to attend a sporting event of a son or a daughter, or not being able to attend a variety of other important family or social events. Now, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, those functions and events most likely have been altered significantly for some of you and have made day-to-day life quite a bit more difficult. But still, because of your hard work and the support of your family and friends and all those who mean the most to you and cherish you dearly, you're here today at your graduation, your academy graduation. As you continue in your service as a firefighter, you and your families and friends will continue to sacrifice a certain amount of time together for the good of protecting your communities. Always remember, though, you and your families and your friends have become members of an extended family that is collectively dedicated to supporting your continued success and well-being throughout your fire service career. Each of you have obligations outside of the fire service. for you to be willing to dedicate your valuable free time to serve your communities as a firefighter, while at the same time ensuring that commitments in your personal life are fulfilled, is truly admirable. And in closing, I just sincerely want to thank each and every one of you for all of your hard work and your dedication. So congratulations. And as on a personal note, before we dismiss the class, I want to walk around. I want to shake each of your hands. I'll start right here. Congratulations. You're welcome. Congratulations. 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 Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. 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 Thank you, Chief.
At this time, Chief Mills, Chief Lamb, Chief McCarthy, Chief Walden, and especially Chief Halton, I'd like to present to you the firefighters, for the first time that title, the firefighters of the class of 2001. Class, please rise. Once again, I'd like to thank the staff of the Marinette's Country Club and members of the Southwestern Honor Guard for posting up the colors this morning and hosting us here. With this, we'll end our ceremony. I want to thank everyone for attending. We have some refreshments after the class dismissal. Squad leaders, we have accountability.
Alpha's good. Bravo's good.
Charlie's good.
Tyler, anything for the good of the order?
No, sir.
Absolutely. Chief Halter, with your permission, I'd like to dismiss the class.
Dismiss the class, sir.
Tyler, dismiss.
Left face. You are dismissed.
And with that, we officially end our ceremony. Thank you everyone for attending. Have a safe weekend.